Welcome everyone to Couch Potato Diary. Happy Tuesday. My name is Peter Klein. Thank you very much for hanging out today. Recording this one live on twitch.tv/primetimepk. Toxic already in the chat. Greatly appreciated as always. So for the live stream today, we are going to be doing a lot of boxing and then a lot of NFL, and probably going to break up the two for podcast listeners and then break off everything into YouTube as always. But that is the plan for today, looking at Fury Usyk, a tremendous rematch, and then we'll be getting into all the NFL stuff and the usual NFL stuff for the next couple of days. So the fantasy football things, and then we'll get into the power rankings. Hopefully it doesn't take too long because I have a lot to do because it's Christmas Eve. So let's get right into it and talk some boxing. What a spectacular, brilliant rematch that we had Saturday afternoon from Kingdom Arena in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, as Oleksandr Usyk is still the unified but not undisputed, some stupid how, heavyweight champion of the world, as he beats Tyson Fury by unanimous decision. Let's run through the fight. We're going to break down the fight. We're going to look at how this affects legacy, do a little bit of a thing on commentary. Then we will get into the boxing pound for pound rankings, and we will look at the fights to make coming out of this one. So the usual week's worth of stuff, we're doing it all today here on Couch Potato Diary. So we begin with how this fight starts, round one. And kind of a lot of times when you have fights like this, there is it's round 13, here we go. This one had a bit more of a feel of round one of fight 2 instead of round 13, if that makes sense. It was still a little bit feeling out. It was still, okay, how are you going to adjust? How am I going to adjust? Let's see what happens. But Fury did a good job keeping Usyk at range, which was a big thing in the early part of this fight. Had that jab going and was really able to get a couple of rounds early on. Usyk does get a little bit more aggressive in the second round, and he starts working the body. And that would be a theme throughout the night, is that he would use those punches to the body for a couple of things. One, he would use it to get inside. Two, he was using it to get into a bit of a rhythm and get into, sorry, I just punched my microphone, get into the flow of the fight a little bit. But Fury is still able to keep Usyk at distance, way better than the first fight, and he's also taking the second round. Usyk does keep getting inside, he wins the next couple of rounds, and evens things up, Then we get into one of the first big adjustments of this fight, and it really becomes noticeable in round 5, when Tyson Fury, he's not backing up anymore. First fight, we said it was whoever was coming forward was winning the fight. And for those who don't know, that might seem a little simplistic. Like, yes, of course, if I'm coming forward in a fight, I am winning. Counterpunching is a very legitimate way of winning bouts. It just wasn't the way that people were winning, or Fury or Usyk, were winning in the first fight. It was off of just coming forward and really landing those shots. And Usyk was coming forward, but he was being greeted by Tyson Fury. Fury wasn't backing up. He only got hung up in the ropes once or twice. I don't know if he got hung up in the corner at all in this fight. He was really settling down and really committing to those punches, and that was doing an excellent job of slowing Usyk's forward momentum. That it was that stalking style in the first fight that eventually led to Usyk getting the win. In this fight, he was trying to do that in the early part, and Fury was standing his ground and he was landing. And then it wasn't just the jab, he was able to follow it up with some real big power punches, and that's where he starts to take over for a little bit here. But then Usyk starts to make an adjustment, and by the 8th round, which is where things turned last time, by the 8th round, he is starting to get this back at a pace that he is comfortable with, and a pace that is going to ultimately be successful for him. And again, it is the body shots that allow him to get inside. And coming into this fight and coming out of the first one, we talked about punching your way in. It is my favorite way for smaller fighters to get inside and get away from that reach advantage. In the first fight, it was those reaching jabs that he was throwing a couple of, and then the first two don't land, but you inch closer each time, and closer. And then the third one, come over the top, boom, land a right, and that heat-seeking missile finds its way. The other way that you can do that is you land a body shot and take a step forward, and then another shot, and you take that step forward, and hey, now you're inside, and now you can start really doing some damage. And Usyk did I thought, brilliant job of doing that and getting inside. And then by this point, Fury's not holding his ground anymore. Whether he is wearing down, or it is just Usyk's forward pressure, or you just have a 230-pound man charging at you, and the natural instinct is to not just stand there. Whatever it was, Fury wasn't holding his ground anymore, and he wasn't really following up off of his jab at all. It was just the jab to try to keep Usyk off of him a little bit, and Usyk was going to be completely fine walking through that. And that was the other part of this, is that even in the ninth, Fury finally finds that right uppercut that looks like the Fight Night punch, where it just swings around and lands with great force, but Usyk is still able to keep that pressure up, and he is still able to land those combinations. And at some point, in round 7th, 8th, 9th round, Usyk decides, I'm going to get hit. This is a fist fight. I'm going to keep coming forward. And that was the big adjustment from what we talked about in the 5th to now 7th, 8th, 9th round. Instead of just like that big shot, and we talked about it a little bit in the first fight too, the Fury counters were getting to the point where Usyk would get inside and then just instinctually cover up. Not because he is scared or anything, but it's just that's when the punches were coming. He knew once he got into range, he was going to get hit. This fight, that wasn't happening. He was just walking it down. So I don't know if he just didn't respect the Fury at some, the power of Fury, at some point. If Fury lost some of his power or lost his steam, or if, like I said, Usyk just decided, hey, it's a fist fight. Probably going to get punched in the head a little bit. I'm just going to keep coming forward. Whatever route he took to this decision, it was the right one. And it was ultimately the one that has him retaining the heavyweight championship of the world, as he is able, again, to constantly get inside, get that forward pressure going, and then from there, he is a goddamn Terminator, just walking down the opposition and coming up with big shots after big shots. And then in the late stages of the fight, Fury is trying to make Usyk kind of carry his weight a little bit, something we talked about. And look, we did in the preview, because all the buzz coming into the week was, hey, Fury might have lost a little bit of weight to try to feel a little bit better about cardio or whatever. It was actually the opposite. He was about 12 pounds heavier coming into this fight. And so I think part of the strategy was late in the fight, as Fury is wearing down, make Usyk try to carry some of that weight and hope that he wears down as well. But instead, they waited until Fury was a little bit slower, a little bit more tired, which I should state is only in comparison to what Usyk was doing. I think Fury fights this way in these last two fights, in these 24 rounds that he fought against any other heavyweight of the last 30 years, Fury whoops that ass. Like, just, I think, dominates. That's how good I think Fury fought, and that is just the level that I think Oleksandr Usyk is at. But Fury is now trying to wear down Usyk and trying to get in and tie up. But like I said, they waited until Fury is a little bit more tired and a little bit slower, and so because of that, as he is coming in, Usyk just lands a couple big shots, and then the tie-up happens, and it doesn't really work. And Usyk is starting to pull away, and he's pulling away, and he is pulling away. The 11th round, I thought, was Usyk's best of the fight. It is a phenomenal mix, as he always does, of speed, volume, and power. At this point, he is walking through everything. Fury has slowed, and he is still trying to counter, but the counter is, like, Usyk is coming in and throws a punch. Usyk throws one, or Fury throws one, but it's a jab. And it's not coming, so he is only throwing one, and Usyk is landing three. And those three are coming with more power than the Fury one. So he is countering with less volume and less power. That's not a way to win. Overall, this was a brilliant fight. I had it 116-112 for Oleksandr Usyk. I do think that he was clearly the better fighter in this bout, and what was just spectacular. I thought it was a masterful job of getting inside, again, with speed, volume, and power, and then he starts pressing again and overwhelming Fury. For Tyson Fury, the power shots are obviously incredible. He was really committing to his punches and really not backing down in the first part of the fight, and that gave him some very big moments. But again, he just couldn't keep Usyk off of him, just couldn't keep him at bay, and Usyk was able to find a way to get that pressure back on once he realized Fury had no answer. Usyk just decided to walk through those power punches and get to it. And again, my thought coming into this fight was whoever was going to make the quickest, I guess, adjustments from the first fight into the second fight was going to be the winner. And I was very interested to see what adjustments were made. And ultimately, the big adjustment that was made was Usyk going back to what worked in that first fight and continuing to be successful in picking up a victory there. So again, just a brilliant performance, I thought, from both. Again, I think Fury fought an amazing fight. He just was not on the level of a guy who is one of the more talented fighters that we have seen in the sport of boxing, certainly in heavyweight boxing, in a really, really, really long time. And he did a phenomenal job in this bout. So what does this mean now? Because when you have two fighters on this level, you obviously start to look at legacy, and you start to look at what these fights actually really mean. And for Usyk, I don't think there is a doubt now. He is the heavyweight of this era. He is the heavyweight of this generation. He does come into the fray after the Fury, Wilder, Joshua resurgence, but he has fought 2/3 of them, and I think many would argue the better 2/3 of them, close to their prime or in their prime, and he beat all of them. He is everything I think that a great heavyweight should be now in 2024. This is no longer necessarily just the land of the giants. Being big certainly helps, but I think now you are seeing that the game has changed a little bit. Especially with Usyk, you have to have the cardio. You have to be able to have the speed and the technique. It is no longer just good enough to just be a power puncher who happens to have abs, who can go the distance against some doughy heavyweights. There is now a new level to this, and Usyk is the one who has established this. And I think, honestly, he is working his way into all-time status. Not all-time great. Like, I don't think we're talking about top 10, probably even not even talking about top 10 at heavyweight. But I do think we are talking about like top 50, top 25 conversations, pound for pound of all time. That is how talented I think he is, and the accomplishments are incredible. When you look at the amateur career, perfect at cruiserweight, perfect at heavyweight, a unifying, undisputed champion at every weight class that he has fought at, and again, when you go over the resume, and they talked about this on Morning Combat, credit to them for this, but he was basically fighting every fighter as if he were the B-side, because he is going into Anthony Joshua's hometown. He is going into Chicago to face American fighters. These guys weren't coming to Ukraine, and obviously for a significant stretch of his career, there was a reason why. But also for this fighter, there is that going on in his home where Ukraine continues to be at war with Russia, and he is continuing to talk about that and continuing to fight through that while his family is dealing with it. It is everything that you want a heavyweight champion story to be. You wish that he wasn't from a war-torn country that is currently in war right now. You wish that wasn't happening. But from an inspirational standpoint, he is everything you want it to be. On the Fury side, and again, we are just talking about boxing here, he's a fantastic champion. I think he brought heavyweight boxing back with the skill he was able to show at his size after the boring, plodding, uninspiring Klitschko era, where it really felt like heavyweight boxing was just going to be who is the biggest guy who can keep things at range and just jab his way and maul his way to boring win after boring win. In comes this giant of a human being who also has cardio, speed, and technique to be able to challenge that level of fighter, the Klitschkos, and then also be able to keep up with smaller fighters and the knockout artists and all of that. He was a very important, and I would say the most important part of this heavyweight resurgence. He just kind of ran into a better version of himself. Someone who could handle his power and outspeed and technique him. And that tier is one of one. And it is Oleksandr Usyk who put on a brilliant show Saturday afternoon in Saudi Arabia. I do quickly want to mention the commentary here. And look, I had different commentary. You can read into that what you will. But I had different commentary than the DAZN one, although it sounds like even the DAZN broadcast had this lean as well. It was a UK broadcast that I was watching, and it wasn't blatant homerism. But there was homerism on this one. Usyk would land 3 good shots. Fury would land a counter, which was a good counter, but then they would talk for 45 seconds about the Fury counter and not really make mention to the fact that, hey, Usyk just blasted his brain 3 times. And so it was subtle. It was like Usyk would get his flowers. It wasn't just like, oh, wow, yeah, that guy's dog shit. fluked his way into that. Oh, the brilliance of Tyson Fury. But it was just, oh, a couple good shots there from Usyk, and now here comes Fury. And it was just whenever there was a 50-50 thing, we're always focusing on Fury. And we are looking at everything positive that Fury is doing in this bout. And then you have the judges' scorecards, the judges' scorecards throughout it, and they're giving it to Fury. I had 4 real swing rounds in this fight that I think could have gone either way. The 1st, the 7th, the 9th, and the 10th. They had 2, what I saw on this UK broadcast, they had 2 scorecards on there. So in total, 8 possible rounds there, right? 2 judges and 4 rounds. Of those 8, 6 go to Fury, 1 goes to Usyk, and 1 is a 10-10 round. For reference, 3 judges gave 3 of those 4 rounds to Oleksandr Usyk. And that is just the difference in it, right? And so you're watching this broadcast, you're hearing about all the good things Fury is doing, you're not hearing any of the good things that Usyk is doing, and every close round is going to Tyson Fury. So that is going to, it has to. That has to warp how you view this fight. And so that is what I will say, is that commentary, I think, can be very additive. I learned the sport of MMA. And not all, but at least some of the intricacies with Joe Rogan on commentary, and then Daniel Cormier, and Dominic Cruz is great for it. Like, you can learn a lot on there, but you do also have to understand while you are watching that you are watching and listening to someone's conscious or subconscious biases coming through, and that can kind of warp it. So try to take the commentary for what it is and maybe try to learn some stuff from it, but don't necessarily view it as exactly the way the fight is going. And it's tough because you can't really mute it either. I know some people watch fights on mute, and that is great. The stimulation stuff that my brain needs, that ain't gonna work for me, Jack. I would tune out in a heartbeat. But I do think that, and also not just, ADD, but you also need to hear how the punches are connecting. Right? You can't just see, oh, that looked like an important shot. You have to be able to hear it. And sometimes that can be a little deceiving too. But I do think you have to be smart about it if you're not going to let commentary kind of skew you a little bit. Speaking of judging, the AI judge, we got some work to do. I will argue 4 10-10 rounds another day, but just throwing one out there, that's not really how the sport works right now. So AA judging, we got a ways to go, but I also don't mind that they tried it a little bit. So now that we have rambled on about this fight, what does it mean in the grand scope of the sport? Well, the boxing pound for pound rankings, at least mine, have changed. Let's talk about it. Really got to make new intros and music for these things. But it is the boxing pound for pound rankings after Usyk versus Fury 2. Oleksandr Usyk with a brilliant performance. He entered the weekend as the number 2 fighter on my pound for pound rankings. So where is he now? Let's look at it. We begin with Teofimo Lopez at number 10. Every time I was going through looking for a fighter who I thought, maybe this guy could be a 10. They lost to Lopez. Okay, well, what about that? Lost to Lopez. All right, well, this guy lost to Lopez. At some point, it was just like, probably should have Teofimo Lopez in here. So he comes in at number 10. At number 9, and it's not for a lack of trying, it is David Benavidez. He just, I don't think, has the big names on the resume yet to work his way up the rankings. I think talent-wise, he certainly deserves to be there. And so maybe there is a bit of projecting going on with this, but I think he is due for a very big 2025. I think he will get it, and I think you will start to see that growth from him in these rankings, and I think you will start to see him move up in the men's pound-for-pound rankings in 2025. At number 8, we have Devin Haney. Again, incredibly talented fighter who has a few very good wins on the resume. At 7, it is Dmitry Bivol. Yes, coming off of the biggest loss of his career, losing to Artur Beterbiev. They are running it back in February, but I just feel like the run that Bivol was on leading up to this, I just couldn't knock him out. of my top 10. At number 6, it is Gervonta Tank Davis. A couple very good wins on the resume for him as he is working toward potentially another one. Although the Instagram thing of, fight's canceled. Well, we'll see. But he is coming up with another big fight here in the first quarter of 2025. And I know if you are a longtime consumer of my content, you will know that I wasn't necessarily the biggest fan of how they marketed that fight, where it was, hey, this is the fight to see who is the face of boxing. That was annoying as hell, because I think the next guy on the list is that. But Tank certainly deserves to be in this conversation, and I think is kind of gearing up towards a very good, again for him, 2025. Coming in at number 5, it is Saul Canelo Alvarez is the number 5 ranker on my pound-for-pound list. I know there will be some frustration with that. I will admit inherent bias, as he is my favorite fighter right now, although, I mean, Usyk has given him a run for his money, and there's a few very good ones. There will be some who will argue that Alvarez should be higher based off of overall body of work and what he has done in his career. And there will be some who say he should be lower, given recency and how he isn't necessarily fighting the top challengers every single time. And so I think if you'll have people arguing on both sides, I feel pretty good about where it is at. Coming in at number 4, I have Terrence Bud Crawford. He had just probably the performance of the year against Errol Spence Jr. when they fought early in 2024. Still a very good fight back in August, but not exactly what you were looking for from him. And when we are talking about the top 4 that we have in boxing right now, I think that you have to just be splitting hairs a little bit when it comes to these guys. Coming in at number 3, our podium is Artur Beterbiev. Again, he has one of the big wins of the year in a victory over Dmitry Bivol, unifying the light heavyweight championships. They have another big rematch coming up in Riyadh season out in February. Coming in at number 2, and it has changed, Naoya Inoue. He has a chance to maybe change this one right back in the beginning part of January as he fights again January 24th out in Tokyo. But again, if you've never watched this guy fight, go watch some YouTube clips right now. The power that he has in working his way through the smaller weight classes is just undeniable. The skill, the technique, the speed, the precision, all of it. It is brilliance. I just have to knock him down below Oleksandr Usyk, who is now the number 1 pound-for-pound fighter in the sport. Back-to-back wins over Tyson Fury in 2024. The way he is able to do it, now undisputed unified champion in a couple of different weight classes. It is just the entire package that he brings, the resume that he has, the skill that he has. I don't think you can deny it anymore. This guy is 100% atop the pound-for-pound rankings in the sport of boxing. So, he's now the number 1. As always in boxing, and in sports really, it comes down to what's next. So, what is next for Oleksandr Usyk? Let's look at the fights to make coming out of this gigantic fight out in Saudi Arabia. So, Oleksandr Usyk is still the heavyweight champion of the world for everyone but the IBF, because again, this sport is silly. So, what can we expect going forward? I think it's obvious what is next for, honestly, probably for both guys. For Oleksandr Usyk, it is Daniel Dubois. He is the only one that you can go with, assuming that we get a win from Dubois in February. He has a bit of momentum right now. Dude looks good on a poster. You can play a highlight reel of some big knockouts. Yes, Usyk has beat him before, but I do think that given the aggression and the growth that we have seen in Dubois' game, you can make a case that he has grown as a fighter since that bout, and you can make a very compelling case that he is the number 1 contender in the heavyweight division. Honestly, I don't know who else you give it to, and if he loses, then I guess you just go with Parker in this bout instead. For the other side of this fight, for Tyson Fury, coming off of a loss, again, I think there is one fight to make, and it's Anthony Joshua. We didn't get it at the time that we wanted it, but it just makes so much sense. Given where these guys are at right now, I think they are still close enough to their prime that you can argue that this is still a very, very big fight, a very, very important fight. I don't see how you can go with anyone else. So I am going to say that the next fight for Tyson Fury, it should be Anthony Joshua. So that is going to conclude the boxing portion of Couch Potato Diary today. As always, you can follow me on social media at Primetime Klein, streaming live here, twitch.tv/primetimepk. All the videos go up on YouTube and on Daily Motion. And of course, all of it is presented by Sea of Dead.